Hi everyone, Anthony Morgan's Training Academy. Today is about knife safety. When I say knife safety, it's about how to use your knife safe. Okay, a little story for you. A couple days ago, I was trying to open a caulking tube. Okay, and I'm very proficient with knives. I've been teaching carving class, for years and years. I'm an avid carver. I've been carving since I was 6 years old. But trust me when I say this, I cut myself all the time. Okay, now you'd say, well, why don't you wear specialized equipment? Why don't you wear special gloves? Things are going to happen. Okay, things are going to, and I was just trying to open something like this and it popped open, the knife went in and made a little tiny cut right there. Well, and I just sharpened my knife so it was razor sharp. But a friend of mine just cut her finger really, really bad, had to have, some stitches and things. And the thing is, in life, we can't always be so careful that we don't do anything. And if you say, well, I don't want to go up in a plane because what happens if it crashes? Then you'll never go up in a plane. If I say, well, I don't want to go in the water because I'll drown. Okay, well, then you'll never go in the water. Same with working on knives. Anytime that I'm working with a knife, there's going to be probability that I am going to cut myself. Well, how deep am I going to cut myself? Is it going to be... And so you try to prevent problems. I mean, I cut this finger, off when I was carving with a chainsaw blade. Things happen. But it teaches us, every time something like that happens, it makes us a little bit more aware of what we're doing. And failure is not, just because you cut yourself doesn't mean that you're a failure. It means you failed at that moment in time of holding the knife properly. Doesn't mean you're a failure. If you cut yourself all the time, you say, I'm a failure. No, you're not a failure. That's part of your learning process. So, they say, everybody always says, don't cut towards you. Well, there's going to be times that you cut towards you, and there's going to be times that you cut away from you. Does that prevent us from getting cut? No, it doesn't. Okay, I can cut through here. I've stuck chisels in my hand from carving like this. Now, sure, you can put leather gloves on. You can put all this cool stuff on, but you can't feel the object that you're working with. Okay, if I'm doing a carving here, and I want to work this little area right here, okay, I have to be able to feel that. The same with Wing Chun. I have to feel with these hands on what I'm doing in order to have sensitivity. So when I'm working here, I want to be able to feel, because I listen to my blade when I'm carving. Is it chattering? Is it carving smooth? If it's not carving smooth, that tells me that the blade may not be sharp. So I may be working this, I may be just doing little tiny things. Mistakes are going to happen. We live with the mistakes. Okay, we learn by the mistakes. Don't, it's like raising kids. You say, don't go climb that tree because if you fall out, you're going to get hurt. Well, my dad and mom never ever told me that. I fell out of tons of trees. I got injured all the time when I was a kid. I had scuffed up knees. So don't limit yourself by saying, well, I want to do jiu-jitsu, but everybody I talk to has hurt knees. Well, that's part of life. We grow by what we get involved in. And so don't get too caught up in saying no to too many things. Well, I cut my finger once, so I don't want to carve again. Well, now you're losing out on part of that life that you'll never ever do again. You may get really, really good at carving. So, certain points about carving, especially wood carving, that it's just kind of like knife fighting. You're going to get cut, so expect it. So when I'm carving, but you can put little tabs on your fingers so you don't get cut as much. You're still going to get cut, but this position right here, this thumb is always cut. Now, sure, I can put a piece of leather there, but I can't feel the objects that I'm carving on. So you kind of have to weigh that out on what's going to be best. If I'm working with an axe and I'm splitting wood, there's a tendency I may make a judgment call and miss the block of wood and cut my finger. This is where we learn, okay? And this is where we really get good at what we're doing, is by learning what works and what doesn't work. And the best example, if I start trying to teach somebody how to carve, to say, okay, well, good, you got cut, so now you know that how to try to manipulate that blade. But, you know, I mean, I'm experienced. I get cut all the time. But don't let it stop you from doing what you want to do. Try to understand that. Always carry Band-Aids. Band-Aids are great, okay? And now, the saying of the Band-Aids, okay, this is something that I want to kind of pass to you guys. Sometimes if you're, I'm going to take you back on just a little bit. If I'm working jiu-jitsu, okay, a lot of times I'll tape my wrist. Are they injured? No, but I don't want to injure them, so I'll put tape around my wrist to keep it from injuring. Sometimes I'll tape my toes up so I don't get my toes sprung out. That's precautions. So Band-Aids, okay, sometimes I'll put 2 or 3 Band-Aids around this thumb. I can still feel what I'm carving, but I can put a Band-Aid around here and I say, okay, well, the Band-Aids do pretty well, okay, but they do have rubber Band-Aids that you really can't cut through. So a lot of times I'll put a Band-Aid or I'll put tape around there. Sometimes I'll put a little piece of leather through here, a little piece of leather with my thumb goes through. You can do all kinds of things like that to make your carving or your knife work more enjoyable. So always carrying a good selection of Band-Aids with your carving tools and with your knife blade. My medical kit, I'm constantly supplying Band-Aids because my guys get little cuts on their arms. They get little, you know, from different things in the classes. But just because you get cut doesn't mean that you're failing in carving. Okay, you're failing with knife work. It just means that you're learning how that works. So Band-Aids, okay, wrap the thumb with a Band-Aid anytime you want to start doing heavy carving, or take a glove and cut off the thumb out of a leather glove and just slip it over your finger, okay, or your thumb. And that way it's protected, especially if I'm doing any carving back to me. Just put a glove on, a thumb glove, okay? You just take a glove, cut the thumb off, and slip it on, and so that way if you're carving to you, you're not going to get cut, because the carving knives are really sharp. So anyway, just a little bit about carving. Keep carving, okay? Keep working with knives, and keep doing all the things that everybody tells you you shouldn't do, okay? Jumping out of airplanes, going skydiving, swimming, deep sea diving. Okay, don't stop that because you have a fear. You know, embrace that and say, okay, I know I'm going to get cut. So put Band-Aids around your thumb, okay? Go dive more, jump out of airplanes more. You know, me personally, why would you jump out of a perfectly good airplane? That's my theory. You know, it's nothing that I would really ever want to do. Of course, then like water. I don't really like water that much. But some people love it, and if you love it, then great. I just don't have a wish to be in any one of those things. So don't give up when you get cut, okay? And think about the safety things, you know, and work slow with your blade when you're just starting out with your blade, and carry a lot of Band-Aids. Thank you, and I will see you in the next video.